The Minnesota Vikings. Okay. Things were going rather awesome for the Vikings during the first, 17 weeks of 2024, right? 14-2 start. Then there was the week 18 winner take all showdown with the Lions for both the NFC North and the conference's number one seed, right? The Vikings got smacked 31-9. Sadly, things only got worse the following week when, the trip to Los Angeles resulted in another 3-score beatdown at the hands of the Rams. The Vikings went from a 122 over point differential during the first 89% of their season to a minus 40 disparity during their most two important weeks. I'm not a Viking fan, and that still hurt me to write down. Glass half full view is that this is still one of 6 squads to post a top 10 scoring offense and defense. They were 9th in points per game and 5th in points per against. So, of course, things will look a little bit different on the former side of the ball in 2025 now that, J.J. McCarthy will be taking over for Sam Darnold under center. Throw in multiple big dollar and or early investments into both the offensive and defensive lines, and you have a team seemingly ready to compete to be one of the best squads in the league. So let's dive into this. Let's dive into the Minnesota Vikings. Is J.J. McCarthy poised to be Kevin O'Connell's next great fantasy quarterback? Okay, I am a very big Kevin O'Connell advocate. Kevin O'Connell legitimately is the quarterback whisperer, as they like to say. He does wonders, and I think that's a lot why Sam Darnold succeeded the way he is. And when he doesn't succeed as well in Seattle, that'll be proven. He's had Kirk Cousins at his best in his career. Kirk Cousins leaves and he's falls off the face of the earth. So I'm a big Kevin O'Connell guy, and let's take a quick trip down memory lane. Okay, again, Kirk Cousins sets a new career high in 2022, 4,500 passing yards, and finishes as quarterback 12 in fantasy points per game. In 2023, Cousins works as quarterback 6 before tearing his Achilles. Then his replacement, Joshua Dobbs, ripped off 3 top 9 finishes before the wheels fell off. Okay, after that, Nick Mullins even posted a quarterback 14, quarterback 11, and quarterback 5, guys, finishes in his only 3 starts. Now, 2024, long considered a monster bust, right? Sam Darnold accounts for 36 touchdowns on his way to working as the quarterback 9 in fantasy points per game. Okay, well, not too shabby. Obviously, having one of the NFL's best wide receiver duos, in my opinion, in Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and alongside T.J. Hawkinson, it does make life easier for quarterbacks of all shapes and sizes. So what happens when this group is met with a legit blue chip prospect in the form of the 10th overall pick? Okay. The point about J.J. McCarthy's athleticism could wind up being a solid resource in fantasy land. While McCarthy only averaged 4.2 fantasy points per game from rushing in his last 2 collegiate seasons, okay, his efficiency on those scrambles, though, which was 9.3 yards per run, were actually better than Caleb Williams, Jalen Milroe, and Drake May. Okay, so yes, betting heavily on McCarthy before he's played a regular season snap does carry some risk. Also, yes, some of the draft community's sharpest analysts, in my opinion, believe that McCarthy would have been the first quarterback off the board in this year's draft ahead of Cam Ward and company. Okay, Throw that sort of talent inside an offense that has already made a habit of supplying a top-tier supporting cast, and, well, Sam Darnold. So, bottom line, I'm higher on McCarthy than, most people that I've seen. I think that I have him ranked as my quarterback 17. I'm buying into the youth. I'm buying into the talent, and most of all, the offensive environment over guys like, in my opinion, now this is dynasty-wise. Redraft, this might be a little rough. But dynasty-wise, I'm taking him over guys like Dak, CJ, Tua, and among others. So, in redraft, I might take Dak and CJ over him. But I would be interested to take him over Tua for sure. I get this isn't exactly the biggest endorsement in the world, right? Considering that it's just mid-tier, quarterback 2 status. But just realize he's in the same tier as guys like Herbert, May, Love, and Lawrence, and that's the sort of upside that we could be looking at here. Okay, so our drafters underestimating Aaron Jones' upside as the lead back. We talked about Aaron Jones a couple of weeks ago. Aaron parlayed plenty of production as the rusher last year, getting over 250 carries, over 1,100 yards, and 5 scores. And as a receiver as well, 51 catches for 2 more scores, into a running back 20 finish in points per game in his first year wearing purple. So those 306 touches were the most of his career. And yet it's tough to look at Jones' advanced numbers from last season and conclude that he was anything close to elite. The Vikings' 21st ranked offensive line in rush yards before contact, per carry didn't help matters. Just realize that Jones ranked 17th or worse in missed tackles, force per carry, explosive rush rate, yards after contact, and successful rush rate among all 31 qualified running backs. So he's about mid-tier, guys. I mean, it's middle of the pack. 31 years old next December. The history of running backs putting forward running back 1 caliber seasons of fantasy lands at this age, it's not really existent. Now, that just doesn't mean that Jones can't return usable fantasy value in the right environment, right? Just realize it's almost a certainty that we've seen the best ball of his career, okay? So this brings us to the Vikings, offseason edition, the ex-49er Jordan Mason, who made the absolute most out of his opportunities as the rusher with Christian McCaffrey banged up last season, right? Seriously, though, only Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley had more rushing yards than Mason during the first 8 weeks of 2024. And the guy was eating. He's third in next-gen stats rushing yards. Over expected per carry, Mason finds out himself in elite company when looking at some of his advanced rushing metrics, okay? The mid-season AC joint sprain and the high ankle sprain, I think it was in December, prevented Mason from putting forward an encore during the second half of the season. Okay, either way, kudos to Jordan Mason for the making of this and for the most of his opportunities and putting some pretty great plays on film, excuse me. So the team's shuffling on the offensive line isn't guaranteed to yield better results. But at least they're trying in the form of, they got Will Fries on a 5-year deal, Ryan Kelly at center, as well as a first-round pick in Donovan Jackson. So now, this stands as the league's 4th most expensive group of the big men in terms of $20-25. So the bottom line here is O'Connell has openly spoken, okay, about how getting Jones back into more of a 1A, 1B backfield structure can bring out the best of his 8-year career. Yet even a little reduction in touches leaves plenty of room for Jones to produce some fireworks at running back 28. I think that his ADP is respectable at this point. I think he's a great zero running back target for managers prioritizing wide receivers and an elite quarterback or tight end at the top of the draft. Okay. Now, as for Mason, it's possible he carves out some standalone value if given double-digit touches per game and a goal line role, something Kevin O'Connell has already hinted at, right? Now his running back 34 ADP in Mason is a bit pricey, I think. I think he's on like a flex level role. What if it doesn't come to fruition? I think there's more pure handcuffs like Trey Benson, Ray Davis, Tyler Algier for the Falcons, and they're quite a bit cheaper as well. But still, like those other backs, Mason would instantly be in a weekly upside running back 2 conversation should his team starter miss any game action. And we've talked about Aaron Jones, and it seems that he does miss a few games every now and then, or miss some time during the game, I should say. Should both Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison be prioritized in fantasy drafts of all shapes and sizes? Okay, we have Justin Jefferson at wide receiver 2 and Jordan Addison at wide receiver 35. We won't spend much time on the Jetta's part of the equation. Short answer is yes, the wide receiver 2 in career points per game ever is locked in as Kevin O'Connell's undisputed number 1 pass game option, right? A role which has yielded a 17-game average of 170 targets. It's just below 10 targets per game, guys. He's the 4th overall player in the fantasy life rankings, and someone who could even be due for some positive regression of sorts, considering nobody racked up more defensive pass interference yards last season than Justin Jefferson. Now, that brings us to Addison. Overcame in August and September ankle injuries to improve upon his already stellar rookie campaign, in my opinion. His nose for the end zone has truly been amazing. Addison's 19 receiving touchdowns are tied for the 5th most during the first 2 seasons of their career since 1998. So, yeah, that's some pretty special company. Naturally, this has led to plenty of booms in fantasy land. Okay, want to hear the sort of cool cut-off off-season stat that you can take a lone fantasy analysis from 6 to midnight in a hurry? Last season, Addison scored the 5th most points per game of any wide receiver during weeks 9 through 17, just behind Justin Jefferson. Okay, so that means from week 9 to week 17, Justin Jefferson was number 4 and Addison was number 5. That doesn't scare you. I don't know what does. Whether it's crispy double moves from Jordan Addison, I love his yards after catch. But, I think the guy's made a lot of impressive plays during his, his guy's only 22, as a matter of fact, in that. Now, on the flip side of that, I do think that Addison's target ceiling will always be a bit capped while playing, the Robin to Justin Jefferson's Batman. I think that, Fantasy Life had their targets respectively earning 145 for Justin Jefferson and 94 for Addison. I think that's respectable. There's still potential for Addison to face suspension. We have to remember this, stemming from last July's DUI charge. So there's literally, his name is Drew Davenport. He is the fantasy football legal expert, okay, and actual lawyer, for fantasy football. But he believes that about a 1 to 2 game suspension is firmly in play for this season. But then again, legal systems can move quite slowly at times, right? In the NFL, as we've seen. So a prolonged trial could ultimately lead to another push to next year. So just pay attention to that. Addison is the reigning wide receiver 30 and wide receiver 23 in points per game. He remains a good bet to supply a wide receiver at 3 upside if he's on the field, right? But the bottom line is draft Jefferson as a top 5 fantasy asset. In my opinion, with all the confidence in the world. While Addison is firmly in the mid-tier wide receiver 3 conversation and someone I prefer over less proven options with the similar ADPs like Rome Odunze, Ricky Pearsall, and Matthew Golden, I would much prefer a Jordan Addison who's proven himself. But if we've learned one thing from the Kevin O'Connell experience over the past 3 seasons, is to trust the upside of this passing game. Okay. Will T.J. Hawkinson post elite numbers? An extra year removed from a knee injury. Okay. I do have him as the tight end 5 right now. The long-time tight end didn't really suit up until week 9 last season and didn't score his first touchdown until the Vikings wild card loss to the Rams, right? Throw in a 4-year low in receiving yards per game at 45.5, which was not like TJ, and 8.7 points per contest, which was tight end 17. It's fair to wonder exactly how much upside the soon-to-be 28-year-old still has. Then again, we are just one singular season removed from Hawkinson working as the tight end 2 in points per game at 14.6. Now, those numbers are a bit inflated, from Jefferson missing essentially 8 games during the middle of that season. But here's Hawkinson's numbers in 2023 with and without Justin Jefferson. Per game with Jefferson with 7 games, he averages 7 targets for 53 yards and about 13 points per game. Now, without on 8 games, he averages almost 10 targets a game, 75 yards, and just above 16 points per game. So, look, 12.8 points per game from a tight end is still a solid number. It would have been good for tight end 6 status in each of the past 2 years, okay? That's good. Maybe not the sort of non-injury induced ceiling we're chasing too early in the drafts, but the bottom line is the tight end 5 in early ADP. I've found myself usually going after top 6 quarterbacks, top 30 running backs, or top 48 wide receivers instead of going hard in the paint for a TJ Hawkinson at his price, okay? There's better ones after the fact. Like I've said, I've talked about David Njoku tonight, Evan Ingram. We've talked about a few that could definitely be some late round gems there. Now, let's talk about Brian Flores for a minute. I think that this guy deserved a head coaching job next year. I think he eventually will get one. But what makes Brian Flores' defensive scheme so unique? Okay, so for the defensive leagues, right? Mostly his tendency to blitz like an absolute madman. Flores is basically like, Coach Bill Yost from Remember the Titans when he declares his intention to blitz all night. I mean, it's how I picture it. Flores' blitz rate on dropbacks per year. Okay, since 2019 to 2024, I'm going to go in order. 10th, 6th, 2nd, 1st, the last 2 years. So he's gotten better every year, but now he's bringing the whole house. The last 2 years have been 49.5% and 38.6%, both first. So that strategy's, certainly worked. The Vikings ranked 9th in pressure rate over the past 2 seasons and improved their scoring defense from 13th to 5th. Okay, so what is the prediction for the Minnesota Vikings for 2025? The Vikings, have a modest 8.5 win total. And honestly, it's my favorite over that I've probably come across so far. Kevin O'Connell has posted 13, 7, and 14 wins during his 3 seasons leading this squad. And now might have just found his best quarterback yet. Let's be honest about it. He's had Kirk Cousins, he's had Joshua Dobbs, and Sam Darnold. J.J. McCarthy has the potential to be the best out of that group. Throw in what sure looks like an improved defensive line thanks to the presence of Jonathan Allen and Javon Hargrave. That's a for sure bet for me. I can't get that any more clear. And for my bold fantasy related call, I'm going to say Jordan Mason will return to legit running back 1 production. So I believe that he could be a guy that you draft to be a starter during his brief stint, hopefully for Aaron Jones, as the team's lead back when pushed back into action. So I think that Jordan Mason is going to be an absolute steal this year, guys.